This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
It was 1 o'clock in the morning, and a certain Rov was driving down on Route 17 on the way to Monsey. It was 1 o'clock in the morning, it was dark, he was tired, and he realized it was dangerous to be traveling at a high speed late at night. It's dangerous, you're tired, your eyelids start to close. So he said, that's it, I need a coffee. I must have a coffee. So he looks around to see where he can stop. It's a safe place to stop, where that sells coffee. And he keeps on driving and driving until eventually he finds an area off the motorway, off the highway, that have these lights, flashing, saying hot coffee. He thinks that's great. It's 1 o'clock in the morning, it's 1:30 at that time. And he stops. And he thinks to himself, probably not the best thing to do at 1:30 in the morning, middle of a highway somewhere in the middle of who knows where. But you know what? It's more dangerous to continue driving. So he stopped. And he was imagining this steaming glass of coffee. And he walks in to this little grocery, little makolet, little shop, little store over there. And he sees, the obvious regular things they have there. They have bottles of Coke. They have chips. They have cheese, they have ham, sandwiches, real goyish place. And thinks to himself, perfect place for a rabbi to be at 1:30 in the morning in the middle of some highway, in the middle of anywhere. Anyway, he doesn't see anybody serving, so he sort of knocks on the table over there where they serve, and out comes this guy with this big long curly hair and this Harley Davidson sort of t-shirt on with a couple of earrings going down his ear over there. Real interesting fellow. The guy takes one look at him and says to the rabbi, Shalom! Whoa, this is what I have to be greeted in the middle of the night in the highway here in America. So he says, Shalom Aleichem, the rabbi says back. And the guy says to him, who was obviously an Israeli, he said, oh, you people from America, you have no idea how to speak. Aleichem is plural. You don't say Shalom Aleichem unless you're greeting a lot of people. I'm only one person. So the rabbi thinks to himself, I'm getting a mussar shmooze from this guy over here, how to speak Hebrew. This is great. So he says to him, and he thought for himself, I've got to think of something to say. He thought of something to say. And he said, no, it's not true. Because every single person is accompanied by malachim. Every person is accompanied by angels. And these angels are accompanying wherever you go. And therefore, I wasn't only speaking to you, I was also speaking to your malachim that are accompanying you. He thought to himself, after he said that, he thought, why on earth did I say that? The guy said, oh, you rabbi, what are you talking about? Malachim, angels, I don't know what you're talking about. Take your coffee and get out of here. He took his coffee and he drove off. 2 months later, Rabbi Yisai, this rabbi came back for another Talmud's chasana. He's driving on the same route, Route 17, on the way to Monsey, and he's tired. It's like 2 o'clock in the morning. I need a coffee. Oh, you remember, 2 months ago, okay, I have to go back to that place. And he keeps on driving and he finds the place. Same lights over there. He walks in and he sees the same person wearing the same t-shirt. And the guy looks at him and says to him, "Ata makalkel et hachayim sheli." You have ruined my life. I ruined your life? I don't know what you're talking about. I came here 2 months ago to get a coffee. What are you talking about? He said, listen, Rabbi, here. When you came in here 2 months ago, you said to me something about malachim and angels. I don't know, the whole business over there. As soon as you left, I was about to tuck into a nice ham and cheese sandwich. And I thought to myself, there's malachim somewhere around here. I can't just tuck into this ham and cheese sandwich. I'm being escorted by malachim. So I couldn't have it. And every time I wanted to do something wrong, I just couldn't do it. Because of what you said. Take your coffee and I don't want to see you ever again. And he went out. And the rabbi thought to himself, look at that. You say a few words, a few innocent words, and you have no idea how you can impact somebody's life. Tonight, Rabbi Yisai Be'ezah Hashem, what I'd like to do is talk about a seeming harmless topic. But it's a topic which I believe needs strengthening in all of our lives, myself included. It's a topic that unfortunately seems to be falling in different directions. And again, this is something that is so choshev because it's in our hand, the lives of many, many people. And it all sprouts from right over here. There's a Yerushalmi in Brochus, Perek Aleph, where the Yerushalmi writes Oma Reb Shimon Bar Yochai. Says the Heilige Reb Shimon. The Reb Shimon told Shemayim, if I would have been in Har Sinai, I would have asked for 2 mouths. 2 mouths. 1 mouth for Torah, and 1 mouth for all the other stuff. And they said back to him, it's a chazal. No, look what happened to people that only have 1 mouth. Can you imagine what would happen with people with 2 mouths? It's Yerushalmi. It's a chazal. I want to speak about a topic about language. Language which many of us don't use, many of us never did use, none of us will use. But nevertheless, language is very, very important. And I want to speak about 3 different madrigas of a person's language that he can use. One of them being nivel peh, one of them being things that are not roi, and one of them things which is even higher madriga, which we'll speak about in a moment. And again, Rabbi said, I'm not here to scare anybody. I'm not here to tell you what's going to happen in Shamayim, although I'm sure we'll speak about it. But it's important for us to know what happens when we open our mouths and speak to other people, how much it can affect some other people, and it can also affect ourselves. There is a medrash in Vayikra Rabbah, Parshach of Dalet. Says the medrash, V'lo yireh v'cho ervas dova. Ervas dova Reb Shmuel bar Nachman Omar ze nivel peh. When a person speaks vulgar language, says Chazal, it's a medrash, it's included in the pasuk V'lo yireh v'cho ervas dova. In fact, there's an Even Ezra. The Even Ezra in Dvarim Perich of Gimel Posek Tedvav tells us ervas dova b'maisa, which we all know what that is, udibur. There's a type of erva that's not only b'maisa, but b'dibur. A person can transgress a maisa erva, not only with his body, but with his mouth as well. And the language that you speak can have an effect on yourself and other people in a way that it's called ervas dova. There's a Gemara in Shabbos, Daf Lamed Gimel Lamed Aleph, tells us the Gemara, ba'ovoin nivlois peh, in the Aveira that people speak bad language. And bad language, we don't necessarily mean the words, but anything that's not befitting of a normal from Yiddish Yid to speak. Says the Gemara, Soros Rabbois, Gzeiros Koshois. Says the Gemara, it's a chazal, do you know what happens in the world when a person speaks bad language? We think it only affects ourselves, which of course it does. But it affects our surroundings. And Chazal are telling us it actually affects the world. Because when a person speaks badly, tzoros rabois, how far do we have to look to see the tzoros that we have here in Eretz Yisrael? How far do we have to look to understand what's going on in different places in the world that people are going through? Where's it coming from? People want to know, where's it coming from? Where's the stem? There's a Chazal right here in the Gemara in Shabbos that tells us it stems from us. Because the language that we speak will affect not only ourselves, but affect all of our surroundings, including the whole world. There's a Gemara in Ksubas Dav Chesam and Aleph. Famous Gemara, everybody knows the Gemara. The Gemara tells us, I'm reading you the Lashon, Omer Rav Chanon by Rav, Hakol yoidim kala lema nichnes ala chuppah. Everybody knows why a kala goes to the chuppah. What does that mean? That means everybody knows what happens after the chuppah. Ela kol navel piv umoitzi dova nevela mipiv afilu nechtum like zardino shel shivim shona letoiva nepach loylara. Says the Gemara, everybody knows what happens after the chasana. We all know. But if you say it, and if the words come out of your mouth, 70 years of good. You know what that means? That means in Shammai they wrote down that you are going to have 70 years of such a wonderful life and a happy life and a healthy life and everything. It just in a second gets turned around and you will have a bad next 70 years. And you have people that turn around, Rabbi said, I'm not giving you, medrashim and interesting chumras, I'm giving you straight, clear-cut chazal. It's a Gemara, look it up. People wonder, what happened to our lives? Why are we suffering? I'm not saying this is the answer, but this is definitely an answer. Because Chazal tell us that if a person says things that he shouldn't be saying, 70 years of good get turned over to 70 years of bad. There's a Sefer Haredim, this is so scary. It says the Sefer Haredim, I want to tell you what happens in Shomayim. What happens in Shemayim? We all know what's going on in this world. But tells us Sefer Charedim what's going on in the next world. Says the Sefer Charedim as follows. It's the Perich of Dalet Ois Mem Test. Just in case you don't believe me, look it up. Says the Sefer Charedim that when the moment a person speaks vulgar language, the words that come out of his mouth, and we all know what happens, right? A person's on the basketball pitch, he's on the football pitch, when he's in the basketball court, on the hockey, whatever it is, and someone smashes his toe, and something happens to him, and all of a sudden the words just come out, and he says, "Oh my gosh, it wasn't me, it just came out, it just happened." It's inside you, and it's our job to get it out. Says the Sefer Charedim that the moment that a person speaks bad language, Shechina mistalekes mimenu. The Shechina that was with you, it's gone. It's gone. Not only that, they put you in Chayrim for 40 days in Shamayim, and the Malachim in Shamayim are putting you in Chayrim. So much so, that every single day, 10 trumpets are announcing every single day that this and this person is being put into Chayrim because of his bad language until he does tshuva. Until he gets up and he says, "That's it, Ad Kan, end, finished, enough." You're going to be put into Chayrim and the tefillah says, Chazal does not answered. And there you are, davening a shachris, your mincha, your mariv, with all your strength, with all your heart, because someone needs a refuah shalema. And because you need a parnasa. And because you need a shidduch. And because you want a happy marriage, and you want good children. And the list goes on. And you wonder what's happening. Why don't my tefillahs get answered? I said, it's a Chazal, here it is, the answer. Let's work on it. Let's think about it. There's an unbelievable Mesilas Yesharim. The Mesilas Yesharim tells us in Perik Yud Aleph, Oid, be'inyan znus hapeh v'ha'oizen. You heard that Lashon? Every word says the Vilna Gaon in the Mesilas Yesharim, it can be dying like a Tosfos. Lashon again, I'm going to read it to you again. Oid be'inyan znus hapeh. We understand znus to be a maisa a person does with his body. Says the Mesilas Yesharim, znus can be something you do with your mouth. The words that come out of your mouth are once again, Rabbi Yisai, I'm not only referring to the words, but anything that is disgusting to speak about. Anything that a frum Yid should not be saying is something that's included in znus hapeh. Terrible, terrible thing. There's also, Vayta Mesilas Yesharim tells us, and the imlach of Adam Loim, a person will say, no, big deal. Like, all right, I spoke some bad language. No, it's not the end of the world. I only said it as a joke. So it's a show. It's only a joke. I didn't mean it. I only said it as an expression. I didn't mean it as a real thing. It's an expression. It's how we talk. You ever heard that? The guy says, that's how we talk, Rabbi. Get with the times. Says in Mesilas Yesharim, Rabbi say, Perik Yud Aleph, Shenivel pehu ervosoi shel adibur mamash. Mesilas Yesharim is telling us that a person can have a znus and an error with his dibur, with his peh, with his mouth. That's how koyach. That's the power of your mouth. The power of what it can cause. Not only that, there's a Maral. And the Maral says, what happens if nobody's around? Nobody hears it. You say it to yourself. You speak to yourself. Says the Maral, it doesn't make a difference. If nobody hears it, the fact that it comes out of your mouth, that's bad enough. And let's go a step further. What if you're not the person that says it, but you're the person listening? And this applies also to the person speaking, because everybody speaking in front of other people are causing this to everybody else that's listening. Says the Gemara in Shabbos Lamed Gimel Lamed Aleph, Omer Rabba Bashida, Omer Rav Chista, Kol HaMenavel es Piv. If a person speaks disgustingly, Ma'amikin loy Gehenim. They deepen Gehenim for him. I don't know what that means, but whatever it means, it's pretty bad. Whatever Gehenim is, whatever imagination you have as Gehenim, tells us the Gemara, the words that come out of your mouth have the koyach to deepen and deepen and deepen Gehenim for you. Continues the Gemara. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak Omer af shoymea v'shoysek. If a person hears nivel peh, that's also pretty bad. And the Gemara brings a posuk. So this applies to people that speak it, and it applies to people that hear it, so watch out the company that you're in, to make sure you're not hearing nivel peh. Let me bring you a Lashon Rabbeinu Yoina in Sefer Hayira. Says Rabbeinu Yoina that if a person hears it, he has a hana. It goes inside. The Shlach called the Shlach Shoymea Ka'oina. We know in Kol HaTorah when you hear something, we hear Kiddush on Friday night, we don't make it ourselves. We hear it from somebody else. It's as if we said it. So when you hear it from somebody else and you remain silent, it's as if you said those words as well. That's how scary it is. Let me move on to something else. The Gemara tells us in Ksubas, Tav Hem and Aleph, the Gemara says, Tonat Avei Rabbi Shmuel, Mipnei Maha Oizen Kulei Kosher V'al Yerab Racha. Why is it that the whole ear, you ever wondered this? Why the whole ear is hard? It's like a hard piece. And then you have the earlobe in the bottom over there that's very, very soft. Fush Gemara by Chazal. If a person hears something that's not good, this piece of the ear, says Chazal, is made to go inside and block it off. Your body is made in a way that can block out the garbage. Unbelievable thing. There's a Chofetz Chaim. Listen to this Chofetz Chaim. It's unbelievable. The Chofetz Chaim in Kuntrus Avi Shishon Perek Aleph tells us as follows. And a person does Averas, it causes a tumah to fall onto that Ava, onto that part of the body that did the Avera. Continues the Chofetz Chaim. If a person speaks and hears Dvarim Asurim, Mamshech al Oznov Ruach Tumah Vasidim Liyos Noichim Techil Avei. That's the first Ava that's going to get burnt, is the ear that heard all the things that it shouldn't have heard. And I want to continue now on to stage 2. Until now we are discussing items, we're discussing things that a person can have, that a person can speak in a way that's disgusting, that can speak in a way that's osa. But I would like to move on is other things as well. There's a Gemara in Psachim Daf Gimel Amud Aleph. The Gemara in Psachim tells us this, the Omer Rabbi Shua ben Levi, La'olam al yaitze odom dova meguna bepiv. Says Chazal that a person should never speak something that's not correct, that's not nice. In fact, the Gemara tells us over here in Psachim Daf Gimel, very interesting thing. The Gemara tells us what we know, that in Parsha, in Bereshis, when we're talking about the behemoths and animals that are kosher, not kosher, the Posek goes out of its way to use extra words and extra letters. And we know every word in the Torah is choshev. And the Torah goes out of its way to use a loshon of behema she'ena tahira. Why didn't it say behema tameya? Just say a Torah animal. Says Chazal, you know why? Because it's not nice. Oh, come on! Tomei is such a bad word. I can think of plenty of others. Not the word Tomei. But Chazal are understanding the Torah. When the Torah said behema she'ena tahira, it means it's saying a lashon naki. It's a nice thing to say. And sometimes a person has to realize it might not be a bad word, but is it the right thing to say? Is it something that a Ben Torah should say? Is it something that a frum Yid should be saying out of his mouth? Says the Gemara, no. A person should never have something out of his mouth. And the Shari Tshuva, the Shari Gimel tells us like follows. Says the Shari Tshuva, Geder izor b'neveres peh shi min averes hachamurois. It's so chomer, it's so difficult that a person has to speak always with a clean language. A person has to be careful the words that come out of his mouth. That might not be the words, but they're still not nice words. They're still not words that should be said by someone on his category. So we have Rabbi say number 1, nivel peh. Also words that a person should never be saying, and in fact what Chazal telling us about that is terrible. We also have dvarim she'edim unhagim, the things which are not nice, things which should not be said, and we have a third one, which is Kaddish Atzmacha B'Mutalach. The Ramban says that not everything do you have to say that's mutter, do you actually have to say. And it's a tremendous yesod in many, many things. The Sforno writes in Parshas Noach, we had it just a couple of weeks ago, that we know that Noach planted a vineyard. The first thing he did when he got out the table was what? Planted a vineyard. And he was punished for it. And everybody's busy with why was he punished? And the answer of the Sforno is because yes, you're right, it's mutter, yeah, it's mutter. But is it the right thing to do? How many times do we say something and someone say, don't say that? Oh, what do you mean? But it's mutter. But it's the right thing to say. Is it nice? Is someone going to be affected? Have you thought for a moment that when you speak something and comes out of your mouth, that someone can actually be affected for many, many years to come? And we'll Be'ez Hashem speak about this at a future share as well. The power of your mouth is so much that you have the power to destroy somebody's life by saying something which you think is a harmless statement. But you can harm him for many, many years. For example, of Sheinberg Zatzal, so he used to, as you know, with all the talisim and the tzitzis, so there was a Shabbos elevator in his apartment. He didn't often use it. Very, very rarely. And they used to ask Rosh Yeshiva, what are you doing? With all 100 pair of tzitzis, clumping up the stairs, 6, 7 flights, I can't remember which floor it was right now. It was tremendously difficult. Go in the Shabbos elevator, it's kosher, it's okay, you paskin, it's mutter. He said, you're right, but not everything's mutter you have to do. And that's something that we have to apply to our speech as well. Not everything that's allowed to be said do we have to say. And we have to start watching our words. We have to start watching the words that come out of our mouths. The Bali Musa give a wonderful mashal. The Bali Musa bring the following mashal, a beautiful mashal. They say as follows. A family are going up to the Catskills. They're driving up to Tzfas. They're driving up to Bournemouth, wherever you come from. They're going up to go on vacation for a couple of days. They've got the suitcase on the top of the car. All the kids are excited. Everybody's in the car. They drive off an hour down the road. The father who's driving the car is thinking to himself, did I lock the door? Do you think I locked the door? And he's thinking to himself, I don't remember if I locked the door. I have the key. Did I lock the front door of the house? For 10 minutes he's thinking about it. He turns to his wife. Malkala, did we lock the front door? I just don't remember. I don't remember if we locked the front door. So by now he's already getting nervous, right? He's going away for a few days. He's left his house unlocked. He doesn't know what's going on. So he turns to his 17-year-old son from yeshiva. He says, Moishi, head up for the Gemara. Last year, Shaila. Did we lock the front door? So the son says, I don't know. Al pi chazaka, al pi roi, mistama, you probably did. I don't know. It's a whole lot. He goes down to his 3-year-old daughter in the little high chair over there in the car seat. Did we lock the front door, Rabbi Isai? And they're thinking, and everybody's looking, and the father by now has been driving 2.5 hours. He's not going back anytime soon. And he is so nervous. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. He can't call a neighbor to find out. He doesn't know what to do. He gets there, he's a nervous wreck. He goes into the apartment, he unpacks everything, but his mind is elsewhere. The whole night he's tossing and turning, he's sweating. They'll lock the front door, I don't know what's going to be. What's happened? They got into my house, who knows what's going to be? The whole thing comes 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning, he gets the first chakras, then he can get out, and he gets out of chakras, and he gets his cell phone, and he calls the neighbor, and he says, no, go check the front door. And he runs over to the front door, and he gets there. He comes back and says, it's okay, it's locked. Wow, we locked the front door. Say the Bali Musa, no different is it our mouth. The words that come out with our mouth, why are we not thinking, do we close our mouth or not? Because it can be a lot more painful when our door opens up than a front door of a house. And that's something a person has to think about. We're holding in a generation where we don't even speak so much. Look around now. How many people have a phone? Who's pressing their phone? People are speaking with, not their mouths anymore, people are speaking with their fingers. And I'll tell you what's dangerous about it. I'm not discussing the internet and cell phones and smartphones and I don't know about that. Lay there, I'm not discussing that. But I'll tell you what's dangerous. You can write the things that you would never say. And don't deny this, because this is true. You will always write something that you would never, ever say. You'll speak to someone on the phone, you'll be so polite, you'll be so nice. When you're typing a message, it's much easier to write those things that you'll never want to say. And Rabbi said what we're saying right now doesn't only apply to your mouth, but obviously applies to those things that work for your mouth. In this generation, social is I don't know what nowadays. Everything's on the, with the fingers. Nothing is personal, nothing is talking. Everything is done by, what can we write? But anyway, that's the generation that we're in, and we have to realize, Rabbi say, it's a very serious thing. I want to read to you the most unbelievable Chassam Sofer you probably heard in your entire life. And I know this because I've heard it from people who heard the share that I've given in various places who told me that this Chassam Sofer might have changed their life. There's an unbelievable Chassam Sofer in Parshas Korach. Listen to this Chassam Sofer. Says the Chassam Sofer is talking about the Medrash. Everyone knows the famous Medrash in Parshas Korach. That the Medrash says that Korach was arguing with Moshe Rabbeinu. What was the argument that Korach had with Moshe Rabbeinu? So it was as follows. Korach asks Moshe Rabbeinu the following shaila. If you have a whole house full of svarim, do you need to have a mezuzah? So Moshe Rabbeinu said, of course you do. You can have a house molei svarim all over the place. But you still need to have a mezuzah on the actual door of the house. Says Korach to Moshe Rabbeinu, how can that be? How can it be that an entire lot of svarim, every sefer on the shelf, every sefer that ever came out is in the house, doesn't patter the house from having a mezuzah, but you'll have one scroll with 2 paragraphs of Kriya Shema, and that patters the whole house? That's it. That was the argument that he had. Says the Chassam Sofer, Look at Kairach's argument. That was a good taina. That's a good taina. Why should one scroll on the outside of your door pattern the whole house when Sforim inside the house doesn't do the same thing? Answer the Chassam Sofer, the most unbelievable answer. Listen carefully, remember this message for the rest of your life. Says the Chassam Sofer, it's a remez. What's it trying to teach us? It's trying to teach us that a person can mekadosh the inside whatever he wants. He can reach the madrega of a malach. But it doesn't help unless you guard the entrance. The inside could be as holy as you want. But if you don't guard the entrance, if the mouth is open to whatever you want, it doesn't help. Just like you have a house that's molei svarim, it doesn't help. Because the door doesn't have a mezuzah. There's no guard on the door. There's no guard on your mouth. You can be as holy as you want on the inside. But if you don't have a guard on the outside, it's not worth anything. Said the Chassam Sofer, that's the pshat in Kairach. Rabbi Chanan Wasserman in Kovitz Mamor, Rabbi Isa, listen to this, says, everyone knows that by tzaddikim and by rebbes, that their word is kayim and shamayim. Person goes to a rebbe for a bracha, gets a bracha, and it happens. How can it be? How can it be? The Gemara tells us in brachos, for example, the famous Maisa, in Ksubas, where the fire came down every single Erev Shabbos in the house of Rav. One time it didn't come down and they said, oh, it must be that he died. And he didn't die, but because they said it, he did. Their words mean something, and their words affect reality. Ask Rabbi Chanan Wasserman Zatzal, Rabbi Isai, how can it be that a gadol, that a tzaddik, his words are so have an impact in the real world? And the answer is very simple. He says, when the mouth is so holy, when only the right things come out of the mouth, then the mouth can do much more powerful things. And you don't have to look to Gedolim, you can look at ourselves as well. Like the Chavetz Chaim said, it's like a knife that's blunt, and it's got a lot of rust on it. It won't cut properly. It won't be able to cut because of all the rust. Says the Chavetz Chaim, our mouths are the same thing, the most beautiful instrument ever created. It can say words of Torah, it can say words of tefillah, it can say anything. But you'll make it rusty, you'll break the instrument if you speak the wrong words. Let me just end with one last unbelievable Maisa, what we're just saying. This is a Maisa Shahaya that happened in Petach Tikva a number of years ago. There was an old man that entered into a shul in Petach Tikva. So they gave him an aliyah. So he went up, he was an old, very, very old man. He went up to his aliyah, had his aliyah, and he broke down crying in the middle of the bracha, but he broke down in such a way that he couldn't continue the bracha. They brought him a chair from the shul, and he sat down and he got his composure again, and he continued the bracha. After he finished, they went up to him and said, can you please explain what happened? We understand you're an old man, but what was the crying? What was it all about? The emotions and everything. He said, I'll tell you. He said, today is my birthday. I was born exactly 83 years ago today. Exactly 83 years ago to the day. The last time I had an aliyah was by my bar mitzvah 70 years ago, which took place in Vilna by Reb Chaim Ozer Gudzinski Zatzal, the Gedolei Adar. After my aliyah 70 years ago today, Reb Chaim Ozer went up to my father and said, where are you sending your son? He said, I'm sending him to one of the local universities, which in those days was literally spiritual death. To go to a university in Vilna was basically you're going to cut off from all spiritual ties you ever had. And Reb Chaim Ozer said, I'm begging of you, don't send him there. Because if you'll send your son to a secular education in such a place, in such an environment, he won't have another aliyah for 70 years. And he said, it's 70 years later to the day was my next aliyah, because I went to that university. The words of a gadol have impact. And why? Because the words that he utters are so kodesh, are so emes, they're so beautiful, that when he says something that he wants, it happens. Rabbi Isai, the words that we utter have to be nice. Not only for ourselves, not only for our friends, but for all of the world that are affected by them. A person has the koyach, and this is something we have to internalize. We have the koyach to go and shatter people's lives. We can kill people spiritually. We can kill them literally, physically, with our mouths. That's the power of the mouth. And when you think about that, let's think next time we're about to open our mouth and say something to somebody else, like that man that was in the car, maybe I left the door open. Maybe our mouth is open a little bit too much. And maybe we can try and Be'ez Hashem keep it closed. And when it is open, say the right things. Have a wonderful night.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.